Howdy, folks, and welcome to your storm chasing forecast show for Sunday, June 21st. I am Gabriel Harber, and I have the pleasure, the privilege, the honor of once again recording with junior coach Stephen Cross. What's going on tonight, Stephen?
How is it going, Gabe?
You got a little bit of activity going on there behind you, my man.
Yeah, this is the Storm Chasing Forecast Show watch party.
I feel like it's not fair. You've got, what, 5 other people helping you make the forecast, and I'm here by myself?
Yep. Yeah, sorry about that.
I will be expecting everyone to contribute, so you guys better be on your toes. All right, Stephen, it looks like you had to sneak away to somewhere a little quieter. I imagine it was probably pretty rowdy with that group. We are going to dive right in, deep, some might say, diving in deep to today's setup. I see you've got the 500 millibar winds pulled up, and I know there is a lot of uncertainty regarding the shortwave trough that is going to be overspreading the target area. So we'll go ahead and start there and tell me what you're thinking.
Yeah, so the uncertainty lies in, of course, morning convection. That's just been the main theme this year across the Midwest is, are we going to get, forget derecho that moves through the risk area, or are we going to be clear? And I don't think we're going to be clear at all, but I think it's just going to depend on where this morning convection sets up that composite boundary, that effective warm front. So, and that morning convection is going to be due to this shortwave timing. Ideally, I would like the shortwave to be timed more like 3, 4, 5, 6 p.m., maybe 5 or 6 or 7. But you look at the timing here with this main shortwave, and that's subjecting to the area around 1, maybe even 11 a.m. here, as early as 11 a.m. So we're going to have convection going on in Missouri here, and that convection is going to spread eastward into Illinois and Indiana. And I am noticing some promising trends, at least for storm chasers, with that morning convection kind of being shunted north. The further south it gets, the more it taints that risk area. I'll show you the HRRR runs. The effects of that early shortwave timing, you can see all of this convection. And all of this does have the potential to be severe, even tornadoes with that morning convection, just based on the kinematics that we have in play and the instability. So this line, this kind of broken line of maybe supercells and Boeing segments is going to be going through Missouri at around, it's going to start in the morning hours and spread into our main risk area towards St. Louis. And you can see we may have a couple of supercells that sprout up. And this is going to basically continue on. And this is the 0Z run. You can see it stretches rather far south. This is 3 p.m. But if we look at the latest run, which is our 2Z run, that has it shunted off a lot further north. So this leaves a lot of real estate here from St. Louis, Mount Vernon, all the way up towards Indianapolis. All of this clear air, this should really help with our boundary layer destabilization. So we should have a lot of real estate here, at least based on this latest run for surface-based supercells later on in the day.
I'm glad you were able to clear that up because that is one of the things that stuck out to me when I was looking at this setup before we started recording. I noticed just how much convection there was overspreading the target area early in the day,
Yeah.
and it didn't seem like it cleared out. Like they were talking about it as though it was morning convection, but I was like, this is like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and the convection's still there. At some point, it's not morning convection; it's just stick around all day convection, and that's what I'm getting the vibes from with you talking about the shortwave getting there maybe a little earlier than we would like.
Yeah. So that's always been a fail mode this year. We've seen it with all of these outbreaks, but the past 2 ones that I can think of that we had this morning convection as a concern, and both events did play out. We had some strong tornadoes in the risk area, those past 2 events. And so I don't know if we're going to go 3 for 3 here across Illinois and Indiana, but I think it's trending that way. I think the trends are rather good.
So the inverse of that, of course, would be if we end up not seeing a lot of this convection materialize. That's like game on. You better get your butt out there and be ready because if we're
Yeah.
forecasting for things maybe being sloppy and potentially being held back by this convection, and then we don't end up having that, things could actually trend upwards in a hurry. So always like to talk about what people should be looking for as the day progresses and evolves.
Yeah, exactly. And if we look at our warm front here, this is going to be also a big player. The more convection we get, the more shove south this warm front becomes. So it's like an effective warm front reinforced by that convection. And that's going to be, again, a big player where that convection sets up. Is it going to stretch all the way towards St. Louis and southern Illinois, which is where I'm eyeing into Indiana towards Bloomington for the maximum tornado potential? Or is it going to be further north? Is it going to give us plenty of real estate? That's up in the air for now. That's what Trey likes to call the fly in the ointment. But
It's a robust fly in the ointment if Trey's talking about it.
yes, exactly. So let's go ahead and take a look at wrap for, let's call it, we'll say 3 p.m. That's kind of going to be our transition point from that morning and afternoon convection to surface-based tornadic supercells later in the day. That's our sort of transition point. So we'll look at the trends at 3 p.m. with that effective warm front, where that's setting up on wrap. And you can see it's been honing in on perhaps that central Illinois area, maybe dipping into south central Illinois. And that's going to be along Springfield. It's going to be Quincy, Decatur, Charleston, those areas. And of course, Effingham is going to be south of that. So I think everyone's kind of honed in on Effingham because they just got a tornado the other day, and it's kind of looking like this risk area is going to set up in the same area. But yeah, it's really just going to depend on where that sets up. Wrap seems pretty locked in, but of course, this is just a model.
I know the Storm Prediction Center was talking about an MCV, a mesocyclonic vortex. So, what are you thinking about in terms of the surface low placement and maybe this remnant MCV getting involved? How important is that going to be for the setup today?
Yeah, so we're going to have two areas of low pressure essentially. So our first one is going to be our main synoptic surface low. And you can see that around 1 p.m., that's going to be around the northern Missouri, maybe perhaps southern Iowa area. And that's going to translate off into Illinois. But you can also see, if we focus on Illinois here, you can see an extra little area of spin here. And that is actually our MCV. That's being driven, it's being convectively enhanced here by this convection. So there's like a little area of spin within that convection. And that is going to be our main area that's going to be driving our synoptic risk here in southern Illinois. That's going to back those surface winds for tornadic supercells here in southern Illinois.
MCV, Stephen. I know that's something that gets thrown around a lot in the storm chasing circles, but for folks who maybe aren't as seasoned, maybe haven't storm chased as much, haven't done as much forecasting, what can you tell us about those and why do they enhance local tornado potential?
Yeah, so MCVs are basically areas of spin that are created by storm complexes. If you ever look at a bow echo, like a QLCS, if you look on the northern end, it's often, not all the time, but a lot of times it'll curl up, and that's an MCV, basically. It's a little area of low pressure of spin that forms on the northern end of these storm complexes. And these are very common in the Midwest. They provide a lot of little tornadic setups here in the Midwest. So this day is no exception. And they can be fun to chase. They can create some nice tornado days.
Yeah, and I think, as is always the case with these little features, they tend to increase the backing in the low levels, so you really get winds that are favorable for tornadic profiles.
Yes, exactly.
Is that what you have up right there?
Yeah, and honestly, I'm looking, these surface winds are rather veered. I think it would be even better, obviously, closer to the MCV where these winds are more backed, but obviously that area is going to be rather washed out, so it's out of the picture. You can see those winds are a little bit more back. Those photographs are very nice, but it's very washed out rather than further south. These winds are a little bit more veered. They're still probably feeling the influence of that MCV and that surface low. If we go into southern Illinois there at around 3 p.m., those surface winds are more veered. We have more like mini supercell profiles, which is very common with MCVs. You get these very saturated. This one isn't the best look, but I know there was some soundings taken. That boundary layer was very saturated. You get these very low LCLs. You get very little storm relative inflow, and you get these really easy mini supercells. That's very common here in this region when they're paired with MCVs, and they can be pretty efficient little tornado producers. So I'm rather excited. I think it has some potential for sure.
Not to mention, mini supercells are kind of cute.
They are pretty cute.
I know another thing that you were worried about for today was subsidence. That, of course, is the sinking motion in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. Why has that caught your eye, and why is it concerning for storm chasers?
Yeah, I think in the main risk area, it will be okay. This is more for people who are going to be in like central Missouri, because you can see here's that shortwave trough coming through. And that's obviously where all that convection is going to be trailing. It's going to be with that shortwave trough. And then the actual stuff that we're concerned about, the main risk for tornadic supercells, is going to be on remnant outflow boundaries, perhaps along the warm front. That's how we're going to get convection there in southern Illinois and perhaps in Indiana and northern Kentucky. But the subsidence issue is going to be mainly an issue if you're targeting central Missouri, because central Missouri is going to have a lot of these places are going to have 2 rounds of storms. Let me get SIMREF pulled up again so you guys can see that. So you can see we obviously have this morning round, could get some spin up tornadoes, damaging winds, maybe some isolated large hail there. It's going to be rather messy, but wouldn't be surprised to see a few tornado warnings there. So that's going to be the main round. That's going to be influenced by that short wave coming through. Now, we'll have a second round here across a lot of these areas. And of course, this is the area we're mainly honing in on for tornadic supercells and storm chasing: southern Illinois, northern Kentucky, southern Indiana. But that is going to be perhaps off of remnant outflow boundaries, perhaps off the warm front. But the subsidence issue is going to be an issue if you're storm chasing in central Missouri, which I was considering. But the subsidence issue is the main reason that I'm going to be holding off. Of course, it might get a little bit messy. You can see it could get a little messy there in southern central Missouri. But the subsidence issue, dealt with this a couple of days ago when I chased in northern central Missouri. You can see this shortwave trough. We're going to be on the back side of it. So there could be some sinking motion on the back side of that, and that could thwart robust storm development.
The Chaser Academy is the best deal in storm chasing, and it costs less than a combo meal at McDonald's. Unlock instant access to exclusive storm chasing presentations, participate in live group coaching sessions, and get answers to all of your questions in the unlimited Q&A chat. Whether you're a beginner, a veteran, or somewhere in between, our expert coaches will help you take your storm chasing experience to the next level. Click the join button below this video or on our profile page and enroll in the Chaser Academy right now.
I do want to take some soundings from the HRRR for perhaps these supercells that may initiate in our main focus corridor for tornadic supercells, and that's going to be in southern Illinois. And you can see it actually, 0Z HRRR doesn't really have a whole lot of convection. There's a little bit, but I think it's going to be a short window for atmospheric recovery. And again, the latest runs are trending even further north. So the sign is a little bit more promising for atmospheric recovery in this area. But we'll go ahead and see what 0Z was showing with these supercells at around 6 to 7 p.m. Let's take a sounding there. You can see a very ample tornadic supercell environment, very streamized vorticity in the lowest levels here. Lots of turning with that hodograph in the low levels, ample low-level lapse rates, 7.4 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So these steep low-level lapse rates at the surface should help. And this is even with convection going through that area. So that's fairly impressive. So I think it is a possibility that we see lapse rates in this area above low-level lapse rates in excess of 7 degrees Celsius per kilometer, which would really help with any tornadic supercell potential. And we have ample instability, over 1,000 joules per kilogram. That'll get the job done. Mid-level lapse rates aren't the greatest, but they're certainly sufficient for robust updrafts. And we have a decently deep moist layer and limited upper layer shear. I think we've had that issue a lot this year, and it's really tainted a lot of our setups. So that is something that we have to monitor. I don't think these storms are going to be all that pretty. There's not going to be a whole lot of venting, and PWatts will be on the high side. So even though the atmosphere might be a little bit grungy with these supercells, the potential is there for a couple of tornadic supercells in southern Illinois, southern Indiana, perhaps into central Illinois and Indiana, and into northern Kentucky. So that's going to be our main risk area for this convection that happens a little bit probably after 5, 6, 7 p.m. Okay.
Yeah, that looks like a pretty brutal environment that the HRRR is putting out there. Wow.
So we should have an ample environment here across that main 5 sig risk area. If confidence increases on that composite boundary placement, then I think they could upgrade perhaps to a 10%, but that's going to require more confidence that will really come with morning up. So I wouldn't really expect it by the first day one outlook. But there is another area that I do really want to talk about that I think looks really interesting. I'm still debating on going a couple 100 miles west or a couple 100 miles east for these risks, because I think this one is really compelling. And that's going to be over here in kind of the Joplin area, further west, most likely into Kansas, maybe east of Wichita, south of Kansas City. Just the southeast Kansas corridor, I think, is looking really interesting for perhaps some structure fests, some tornadic supercells. But this is going to be very dependent on, if we take a look here, you can see this wind shift here. So this is going to be a remnant outflow boundary that's going to be left by the convection from the previous day. And that boundary, there's still uncertainty into where it may lie, but it's probably going to be somewhere here across southeast Kansas into far western Missouri. So our boundary is going to be somewhere like that. And we should get enough convergence along that boundary to pop some storms, as you see here. And these will be in a really good environment. So if we take a look at the environment that these may be going into, I think this is a decent environment for perhaps some mini supercells. We got a little bit of curvature there, perhaps for some tornadoes. This is why I think it's mainly a structure day, perhaps some damaging winds and large hail. But I think that tornado risk is there with ample low-level curvature, streamlined vorticity. But these thermodynamics are definitely kicking much better than in the main risk area. You can see lots of dry air aloft, even dry air at the surface, a little bit of dry air, ample instability, perhaps a little bit of a warm nose there, but that shouldn't impede things too much. But I think this is a decent corridor, especially for all of the chasers that were all the way over here in Nebraska and Colorado today and Kansas. I think this is a more viable target than having to drive all the way over here into southern Illinois. So I think this is a good option if you want some structure, perhaps even a couple of tornadoes. And if we take a look at HREF, HREF is very aggressive with this risk. You can see this is 4-hour probability of 2 to 5 kilometer updraft helicity. So where these rotating storms are most likely. And you can see it really likes that southeastern Kansas, western Missouri area, kind of near Joplin and east of Wichita. So if we take a look at the HREF 24-hour tornado probabilities, it's really liking that area. So I find that rather intriguing. You can see this is where that boundary is going to set up. And HREF has some rotating updrafts there, about 50% probability, which is actually higher than our main risk area, which is rather interesting. But you can see these kind of main hotspots here. We may have stuff all here along Missouri, along the front, and then perhaps another mode, of course, that we talked about in southern Illinois into southern Indiana and northern Kentucky. So those are kind of my main 3 risk areas. There's actually another one I would like to talk about.
Before you head over to that final risk area, Stephen, I do know that one thing I noticed about that further southwest play along the front in southeastern Nebraska, western Missouri, is the potential for the shear vectors to be almost parallel with the front orientation. And my concern would be, even if you do get something supercellular there, how long before that congeals into some sort of line complex and really takes away any of that supercellular tornadic potential.
Yeah, so here's our upper level winds with that boundary, where that boundary may set up according to HRRR. And you can see they're roughly parallel. There may be a little bit of perpendicularity with that, but it is roughly parallel with it, which is, of course, a concern. But you can see HRRR still pops up some discrete supercells there along it. So it's just a thing that we'll have to see with morning observations, where that boundary sets up, how its orientation is going to be. So that is a failure mode, of course, with this. I think if you can see here, this convection pops up as well, and that goes linear rather quickly, likely because we're more parallel over here. You can see how parallel we are with this boundary in this region. But over here, we have a little bit more perpendicularity. So I think perhaps east of Wichita is a decent target if you're going for this mode, and follow that southeastward.
All right. And what's that fourth and final target that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so we should have another shortwave trough coming through this area, central high plains into the central plains, and that should help this upslope flow regime. We should have some nice dew points for this region going up into the area, low 60s. That'll get the job done for sure. And this upslope flow regime should initiate a couple of supercells here into Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado. Now let's go ahead and take a sounding. I have a feeling a couple of chasers are going to stick back here because this is a very similar risk area to the day before. You can see very limited low-level curvature. This is well displaced from any low-level jet. But thermodynamics are rather good, especially for photogenic supercells. Got a lot of dry air, and spreads aren't the worst here. They're not fantastic, but you don't need a whole lot out here to get things kicking, at least tornado-wise. This is still going to be mainly a large hail damaging wind threat. SPC has a 2% tornado risk here, but I still think it's a viable target for storm chasers, as could get some structure fest out here with these supercells. And magic happens out here. Further north, we have a little bit deeper of a moist layer, deeper moisture throughout the column, but still stick straight photographs. That should easily support supercells, but are these going to be tornadic is really going to depend on boundaries and whatnot. But I think this is a viable target for storm chasers.
Thank you, everyone, for letting us borrow Stephen for a few minutes, and good luck storm chasing today.
Thank you. Bye.
Remember to check out those links in the description below, and then watch another video.